brief update on what we, the Mid-Counties Co-operative, are doing around our support for food banks and food sharing, particularly over Christmas. But then we're going to welcome some guests to the session where we're going to have a bit of a question and answer session with them. And thanks very much for joining us to our guests. So we've got Bill Cunningham from Too Good To Go, Sophie Paget from Shropshire Food Poverty Alliance, Amanda Jane Strover from Stroud District Food Bank, and Katie Anderson from Shrewsbury Food Hub. So welcome to you all, and I will come to you all in due course to run through the various activities that you're involved with. But what I'm going to do first of all is just share my screen, and also, sorry, just before I do that, for any questions that you might have as well throughout the session, if anything comes to your mind that you want to ask a question about, feel free to use the chat function for those of you that are used to using that, and you should be able to find it if you navigate on across the top of the bar. You should be able to find an option there that enables you to type in a question. And what we'll do as we move through the session, particularly towards the end, we'll check in on any questions that we've got accordingly. Those that are struggling to use the chat function for any reason, hopefully I'll also be able to open up for any sort of verbal questions we might have as well, but we'll work our way around that accordingly. So first of all, I'm just going to share a few slides because, like I say, before I turn to the guests that we've got on, I'm going to just share with you a little bit about what we are doing over this Christmas period to support food banks here at the Mid-Counties Co-operative and support food sharing in general. So if I just start this slideshow from here. Okay, so just a very brief overview here of what we are doing, what we have planned. Food justice is something that is really important for co-op societies across the UK, particularly important for the Mid-Counties Co-operative. We know our members feel this is really important, and we also know that the other co-op societies do a lot of activity in this area as well, because members of co-ops really do see this as being an important issue to support. And if you look across the broader co-op movement, there's some real great activity going on to support food banks and food sharing. Ourselves, along with other co-op societies, have been supporting food banks for a number of years. And we've actually got partnerships with around 70 food banks at the moment in Mid-Counties through our food donations. We've also worked with other co-ops to really try and promote the access of food for schools as well, whether it's been through the school vouchers or deliveries, and we'll come on to that in due course as well, some of the details around that. We support the Healthy Start vouchers, which enables those families on low income to access healthy products for their families. We've also supported and worked with Co-op Party, and not that long ago we supported a campaign around Co-op Party's Food Justice Finder, which was aimed at trying to engage local councils to ensure that all local authorities had some sort of food justice programme in place. So we supported that along with various other co-op societies working with Co-op Party. We also do a lot of work to try and educate around healthy food and healthy living. And one example is the Create and Cook campaign that we sponsor for our food retail business that educates secondary school children on how to cook healthily and the importance of healthy eating. So that's just a bit of background, but the bit I want to touch on now just for a couple of minutes is our real focused activity this Christmas and into the new year, just to bring you all up to speed as members on what it is we are doing. So the big thing that we've got going on currently, running from the 1st of December to the 24th of December, is our Food Bank Fund. So we've launched this fund, and this essentially enables our members and customers to donate to our Food Bank Fund within our food stores. So when members or customers make a transaction in our stores, they can donate to our Food Bank Fund. We are also working with Too Good To Go. I'm not going to go into any more detail on the Too Good To Go element because I'm going to talk to Bill about that in a moment. So, but just to know that that's a real good partnership we've got going on to support the food bank, the Food Bank Fund. We'll continue this donation, this food bank appeal running to the 24th of December. And at that point, we will then tot up the amount we've got and we'll distribute that out to our food bank partners in early January. Certainly feedback we've had from our food banks in the past is that January actually is a really important time for food banks for the support that they need. They tend to get some real good donations in December, which is great, but sometimes when it comes to January, the element dries up, and there's also a potentially increased demand as well in January. So that's when we're going to really focus on ensuring we get those donations out to the food banks. And the great thing for us, this builds on our previous food bank activity as well, our food bank fund. So we've enabled, thanks to the real generosity of our members and customers and colleagues, £50,000 to be generated for our food bank fund previously and donated to our food bank partners. And this obviously really builds on that for us moving forwards. Other activity we're involved with, we'll continue to promote and push the food donations to our food bank partners. We're also trying to promote volunteering opportunities with food banks, and we're trying to do this in a quite strategic way, because we've reached out to all of our food bank partners to identify where volunteering is needed across December and January. We've identified that, and we've actually communicated that out to our colleagues in the first instance to really try and push that through our colleague volunteering programme. And we're also in the process of putting that out to members through our website and also through the member app as well. So watch this space to find out a bit more information on that as well. Within our food stores, our in-store chefs are producing recipe cards and cooking demonstration videos around how to cook on a budget and how to really utilise the types of products that are donated for food bank funds. And that, again, that's going to be made available for a range of channels, including our social channels. And we're also supporting food access to school children and working with 3 particular local authorities in Walsall, Dudley and Shropshire. We are delivering food boxes for vulnerable children from selected food stores, and our colleagues are volunteering to actually deliver those products throughout the leading up to Christmas. And just to highlight one final activity around what we're doing, just as an example, because we do a lot of work with our school partners, but particularly one with Walsall Academy. We've done a lot of work over the years working with to support local food banks and local charities around Christmas. And again, we're doing it this year, where the staff and pupils at the school do a great effort of donating various products to the food banks and local charities. And working with us, we help deliver that to those groups through our colleague volunteering, and we combine that with the donations that we make as well. So just a great example of a bit of cooperative activity there going on with one of our partner schools. And the final bit I'll touch on before I turn to some questions with our guests is how members can get involved in this. And I think the obvious ways here for members to get involved is visit any of our food stores, because in those stores you're able to donate products. You're also able to donate to the food bank if you want to as well, food bank fund. And you can also get involved by downloading the Too Good To Go app, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but that's also an interesting one around helping reduce food waste and also supporting the food bank fund as we lead up to Christmas. And obviously the volunteering opportunities with local food banks as well. As I say, we'll be communicating that out in due course also. So I'm just going to come out of this for a second and stop sharing, because then we're going to go to some questions with our guests. So the first person I would like to bring in, if it's okay, is Bill Cunningham from Too Good To Go. Welcome, Bill.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, looking forward to the session and great to hear more about all your other initiatives.
Thank you, and thanks for joining us, Bill. So the first question for you is, can you please provide further details on Too Good To Go and the work that you're currently doing with us, the Mid-Counties Co-operative?
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, for those of you that haven't heard of us, here at Too Good To Go, we are a food waste app. So our mission as a business is to inspire and empower everyone to fight food waste together. And the primary way that we do that is through our app. And so what we allow is for local users to search for stores on their phone in their locality, and then go and collect food at a time that's preset by our stores to prevent that food from going to waste. And we do this across every retailer you can think of, really. So we work with small independent cafes, coffee shops, all the way up to big chains like Costa, Greggs and Starbucks. And then we've got a fantastic partnership with a number of the regional co-ops, Mid-Counties being our largest actually, where we've allowed consumers and members, yourselves, to come in and collect food at the end of the trading day that the business haven't been able to sell, and that food is perfectly good still for human consumption, but it's just, you know, it hasn't been able to sell through the reductions. And so we allow you to come in at the end of the day and collect a bag of food, stop it going in the bin, and feel great for fighting food waste.
Thanks, Bill. And I suppose leading up to the Christmas side of things and the food bank fund, can you outline how we're working together to support that food bank fund?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a brilliant partnership kicked off when we heard more about the wider work that Mike's already talking you through. So what we're doing throughout December is really, you know, our mission is twofold. So one is to address food waste, and you know, that's really important for us. We know it's one of the biggest things we can do to reverse climate change as well by stopping any food from going in the bin. But then also we're as a business are really focused on food insecurity. So for those of our users that struggle to put food on the table, and we know that the Mid-Counties Co-op have this fantastic food bank fund, and so we're really keen to look at what can we do in a month where we know it's a difficult month, a difficult time for many people, and we wanted to support the great work that all these local food banks are doing. And so throughout December, for every bag of food that you purchase and save via the Too Good To Go app from Mid-County stores, we're donating £1 of that to these food bank funds. So that will go towards all the great work that Mike has outlined, and yeah, we've kind of activated this across the stores as well, just to ensure that everyone, all the members, know that they're not only sort of fighting food waste, but also fighting hunger and allowing all the great work in the communities that the society does to continue in this month.
Thanks, Bill. Final question for now. Is it straightforward for people to start using the Too Good To Go app and become, I think you they referred to as waste warriors, people that use the app?
Yeah, so we've got a real community of waste warriors. So yeah, our Facebook group and the general movement behind food waste, not only through saving the food, but also through the wider education around the scale of food waste. We do have a big community, but yeah, in terms of how can you use the app? So you download it from the App Store. That's either on the Google App Store or the Apple Store, and then you simply log in, and then you're served up with local stores in your area that you can go and arrange a collection from. And we have all sorts of collections, from collections in the middle of the day, but the Mid-Counties collections are at the end of the day. So you go in at the end of the day. The food is a third of its full retail value as well. So it's a good little bargain as well. And then it's really important work to stop any food from the bin.
Thanks, Bill. And I know we'll come back to you again as we go out to other questions. But for now, I'm going to bring in Sophie Paget from Shropshire Food Poverty Alliance. Welcome, Sophie.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Am I off mute successfully?
You are, Sophie. Yeah, we can hear you fine. Thanks. So, Shropshire Food Poverty Alliance, could you provide an overview of the work you do and what your key priorities are?
Yes. So, Shropshire Food Poverty Alliance, we're an alliance of organisations across Shropshire that work together to try and find solutions to the growing problem of food poverty in our communities. We were formed back in about 2018, the Food Hub, so who you'll hear from Katie later on. They knew that through working closely with communities that it was an issue that was increasingly on people's radar, and so this was our response to it. Since the pandemic's hit, we've been doing a lot of work around crisis support, so support to food banks, bolstering that crisis support, making sure that additional support was there and able to be ramped up when it was needed. But now, as we're looking at how we can sort of start to build back after COVID, we're very much shifting our focus to the prevention side of the work that we haven't had the resources all the time to do so much of during COVID. So whilst that's not to say, unfortunately, that emergency support isn't very much still needed, and it is the only alternative for a lot of people out there, we think it's really, really important that we don't leave out of this conversation that food banks do fantastic work. They work tirelessly, again, on very little resource, and they provide a really crucial safety net for people. That we need to hold that with the conversation that really it's not acceptable, and it's not what we would like to see long term. So it's a really difficult path to walk, and all the food banks do it as well and use their collective voice fantastically. That whilst we're not in a position to start to pull back, if anything, it's starting to ramp up, because we've seen the universal credit uplift go, we're seeing fuel prices increase. But we do have a responsibility as people that are seeing the complexity of people's lives, seeing the drivers of food insecurity, which is more often than not insufficient and insecure income, that we keep saying that this isn't ideal. It's not ideal that anyone has to use a food bank. Everyone should have the right to be able to afford food, enough healthy food, and food that is appropriate for them and their families, and the dignity to choose that.
Thanks, Sophie. And you clearly mentioned, obviously, the impacts of the pandemic there. Are you able to articulate the sort of trends around food poverty and the issues that have emerged over the years and how that's changed, perhaps, especially in line with the pandemic? I know you touched on it there, but is there any sort of underlying information there, how it's changed at all?
So the pandemic has, as you would expect, has exacerbated food insecurity, and we hear from, so we host a monthly food bank meeting. I can see a few familiar names and faces on this call. So we hear a lot, the food banks are constantly feeding back to us their frontline experience, and what we've heard from them in Shropshire is that they are seeing a different type of person access the food bank, people that haven't necessarily had to access this form of support before. But it's important to note that this issue, it's been exacerbated, but it predated the pandemic. It existed. And when we look at the drivers of food insecurity, it does come down to income. And then when you look at populations who are at further risk of it, if you have chronic health conditions, disabilities, if you're from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds, you're at an increased risk in comparison to white counterparts. There's lots of factors in your life that will put you at an increased risk of experiencing food insecurity.
Okay, thank you. And for the people on the call and anyone in general, what can we do to help support Shropshire Food Poverty Alliance? Is there anything we can do to support, get involved?
Yes, so you can sign up to our newsletter on the website. We also have lots of resources that we've been developing around taking this, making sure that when we're talking about food poverty and food banks, we're also holding the other side of the conversation, which is that really long term we want to be striving towards them not needing to exist. So we have cash first referral leaflets that we've developed, and we'd encourage you to share those with your network. And yeah, I think just when we're communicating about these issues, which are really emotive and, at the heart, we all just really want to be contributing to what is a problem we didn't exist, that we appreciate the nuances and complexities of this conversation, and that we hold that and we hold space for those issues as we're going forward.
Thanks, Sophie. And that is really helpful for us as a business and how we communicate the messages out. So I think we can carry on some conversations there as well, which would be really good.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm now going to bring in Amanda Jane Strover from Stroud District Food Bank. So first of all, I just want to welcome Amanda and just check you're there because I can't see you on my screen. Apologies. Okay, not to worry. We'll come back because Amanda Jane may joining us in a bit. So we'll move on from Amanda Jane, but we'll keep an eye out between Karen and I if she appears in the lobby. So I suppose seamlessly in a way, Sophie, because it leads on to Katie Anderson, who I know you know well from Shrewsbury Food Hub. And welcome, Katie. Certainly we've worked with you a number of times on many things. So thanks for joining us. Welcome, Katie.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me, Mike. I'm really pleased to be here to just share a bit about the food sharing, which falls entirely between the food bank discussion you've had and the food waste discussion. So we're right in the middle there.
Well, that's good, because when we were putting this together, that's what I was trying to get to. I was trying to get this bigger picture of how it's not just necessarily one thing and how this all potentially can shape together. So, I suppose the first question for you, Katie, if you wouldn't mind describing what Shrewsbury Food Hub do and the issues that you're trying to tackle.
So we started up in April 2016, so 5 years ago now. When we heard from our local homeless charity that there was a supermarket in store that wanted to donate food to them, but they didn't have the volunteers to use it properly, and they also couldn't cope with the amount of food that was being given. So we started up the Food Hub to basically make sure that we get all the food efficiently from all of the supermarkets and then share it between community groups according to what they could use. So we act as a middleman for leftover food from the supermarkets and other suppliers. And from tiny beginnings, and thank you, with a lot of help from the Co-op, especially when we started moving into chilled food, we've really grown. So last year, 116 volunteers stocked an astounding 172 tonnes of food from going to waste. It's hard to imagine what 172 tonnes of food looks like, but I can assure you it's a lot of bread, donuts, fruit, veg, milk, yogurt, meat, ready meals. It's loads of food, enough for more than 800,000 meals. And that's been shared between, again, just last year, 45 community groups. So it goes to our food bank, it goes to the ARC, it goes to Shropshire Mind and allows them to provide soup and a cup of soup and a roll and cake to go with a cup of tea. And it saves those groups about 30% of their food budget. We also share that food at what we call food share tables. Sometimes we get just so much food that there is no group that could use it. So when you've got 800 loaves of bread, you've got to share it out very, very wide. So we have food share tables where people can come and pick up a couple of bags of food for free, and it helps stretch their budget and helps them stop food waste by eating it, because it's all good food. And the real challenge we face is that the food is a bit random. So just to pick up on what Sophie was saying about you know, the need to support people in food poverty, random food doesn't really do it. And so one day, you know, we'll have loads of mangoes and loads of really good stuff to share. Another day it's only bread and donuts. That doesn't solve the problem. So in COVID, we really stepped up our response. We stepped up from a 5-day-a-week operation to a 7-day-a-week operation, and we bought in additional food from Fair Share Birmingham, which can reach into more networks of surplus food and could provide us with a more reliable supply of food to the community. But yeah, as we're moving on, we're really thinking that actually we need to move back to our original start of looking at food waste and focusing on environment. So we've gone a full cycle in 5 years of starting with food waste, realizing there was a massive food poverty problem in our town, developing a response, which is the Shropshire Food Poverty Alliance, and responding during COVID, and now realizing actually we need to move back away from that.
One thing that stands out there, Kate, in the things that you've described is that there's a huge amount of networks you've established there with groups you work with to either donate or groups to give the food to, and all the various bits in between. How did you go about creating all those networks and getting all that set up? Because that sounds quite big.
It was quite big, but the thing was we did it slowly over time. So we started off with collecting from 1 supermarket, then it went to 2. We shared that food between 3 groups, and then it went to 5. By the end of the first year, we had 50 volunteers, and we could do more, and so we went to 10 supermarkets, and now we're with 28 suppliers and 48 groups. And it is a massive network, and one of the things that provides us is a really fantastic way of moving the environmental messages out within the town. So because people know us and trust us, they will listen, we hope, to food waste reduction messages, because that's where we want to focus our campaigning over the next 3 years.
Ah, that's brilliant. And final question for now, but like I say, I probably will come back around to you all at some point. How can people get involved in the Food Hub at this point?
If people are local to Shrewsbury, obviously there are lots of volunteering opportunities. If people want to do the same kind of thing in their community, please get in touch, and I can help you get started. And if you'd like to fuel our wheels going round, there's a donation page. And watch out, because next year we will be starting to talk much more about how we can reduce the 70% of food waste which happens at home. So there's lots of ways to get involved.
Thanks, Katie. That's brilliant. Really appreciate that. And we may, like I say, we may come back to you in due course. Now, I've got a short video clip to play, which I always cross my fingers to make sure this works on this type of environment. So let's hope it does. And the reason I want to show this is, in fact, Sophie, I think, raised the point as well, is ultimately one of the aims is to not need food banks, I guess, one day. So we're not at that stage. And one thing that we're doing at Mid Counties is we're doing a lot of work with a number of our charity partners, but one in particular is a charity partnership we've got with Aspire in Oxford, where we're looking to try and support those at risk of homelessness or those that are homeless into employment to enable them to get back into a situation, obviously, where they are financially viable and no longer need the support of the likes of food banks. So I just want to throw this in because it's often also a question we're asked by members as well, which I think is a really valid question about how we support in beyond food banks. So bear with me one moment and I'll see if I can get this to work. If I can, that's good news. Okay, so in a moment, hopefully, this video will kick in.
The partnership between Mid Counties and Aspire is one based on employment and enterprise support. It's really exciting and it's a great opportunity for Aspire to have a bigger, more established partner to provide the resource and infrastructure so we can do what we do best, which is get people towards and into employment.
So the spark was there was a lot of unemployment in the area, and I was originally over in Rose Hill when we did a pilot scheme, and then we introduced it into the store here, and I think there's some challenges in the local area with employment, so it kind of made sense to go forward and bring it into the store.
So undertaking this work experience project can really improve people's prospects, especially those who are refugees. A lot of them haven't had any work experience in the UK, so this is their first exposure to work-life culture in Britain, especially around improving their English, improving their confidence. A lot of people, that's vital to get on your CV something new, relevant, recent, UK-based, and also they can get a reference, often very glowing reference from as well, which is a real, just absolute lifeline for people when they're trying to get into the work world here in Oxford.
During my first day on my first week, the manager has showed me how to make the store tidy and how to do the facing up. He taught me how to work on the tills, at the tills.
A number of our beneficiaries are individuals who come from a different country of origin. So because of that, they don't necessarily understand how the UK jobs market works, how UK business culture works, and how UK work culture works. So this is a really immersive experience so that they can come and find out as part of their journey into work.
At the beginning, I was very scared because it was my first experience of working in the UK, and my English wasn't very good. And I was scared that people didn't understand me. I can't answer customers. But now I feel more confident, and I am improving. I'm still learning. My favorite part of my job is working at the stage because it lets me talk with customers. I was a nurse in my country during 10 years. Then this experience helped me to improve my English and my skills. I wish to study and to be a nurse in the UK.
Well, whatever the reason is that you've not been able to get into work or struggling still, you're not sure about how to go about it, the programme is designed to help you through that process. How you start that process, what you need to be able to do it, give you the experience working in a store, on tills, filling shelves, all sorts of different administration, that will give you the confidence and the knowledge to be able to then go and find permanent employment, either with us or someone else. the next steps for the partnership is to provide a launch pad for local people to be able to move and into self-employment and set up their own businesses in their communities. It's going to have a ripple effect in the local economy and help the community to build its own wealth and resilience. And it would be great to then see how we can shape and bring the model to other places too.
Co-op values also align very well with that, because they have fair trade. They theirs is all about community and community engagement. So the two of us working together, it's been a very good synergy in the past and hopefully in the future as well.
Okay, so hopefully that just provides a flavour of some of the things that we're looking to do around that, I guess, that whole area of social mobility and supporting people onwards through various opportunities. And with Aspire, we've got the work experience programme that was outlined in that video, and we've also got an enterprise hub set up within our Cowley Centre food store, which actually is enabling people to go in to learn about setting up their own social enterprise ventures as well. So that's a nice little development for us. Feel free to put any questions that you may have in the chat, and also I'll also come to anyone that perhaps have got any questions they want to ask out loud as well, if you'd rather use that function. Just a couple of questions which I'll just throw in before we go to that. Bill, one thing I was going to ask you, now I've got a bit of time, is have you seen, or have Too Good To Go seen, a significant uptake and interest from retailers? Or is it a fairly smooth trend at the moment, or is there quite a big demand for retailers wanting to work with you at the moment?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, certainly following COP, and I think generally with retailers kind of looking at different parts of their business, the sort of amount of project focus on food waste and the full end-to-end solution, really. We play one part of that solution, but we know that the supply chains, the dynamic reductions, the charity partnerships, the community partnerships, there's many different pieces of the puzzle for food waste. And we know that, we're very clear around food banks and charity collections that we'd never want to be taking any food away from those. But equally, we know that there are certain food categories and certain parts of the supply chain where we play a critical role, in between the two. In terms of the momentum we've seen this year, particularly in the UK, it's been, I think if you sum up this year, it's probably more than the previous 5 years of the business. So it's really accelerated, and globally as well. We're now in 17 countries. We recently launched in the US and Canada, and the business kind of reviewing how can we go faster. I think we know across the board that a third of all food produced is wasted. In fact, I think a recent drawdown report cited that as even higher now. It's actually gone up slightly. So we know that there's a huge way to go, and actually, but yeah, it's very encouraging, and I think a lot of retailers are, particularly the regional co-ops, are taking a lead in it, and actually, retailers like yourselves are a fantastic blueprint for how to integrate into the community, how to start on that process towards net zero. We know it's a long process, but yeah, I think hopefully we provide an important part of that puzzle, and we're iterating our business model as well. We know that to provide solutions and education to consumers in their home. I think Katie touched on it, that actually a lot of food waste happens in consumers' homes, and so we have a team that also do work around education pieces. We have a campaign called the Look, Smell, Taste, Don't Waste campaign, just encouraging people to, before you chuck something in the bin at home, use your senses and is it still fine for consumption? Usually it is. People often just chuck things away without really thinking. So that's another part of what we're trying to do as well, and drive that awareness. And equally in the other, our core business model at the moment is in retail, but we know that downstream at suppliers and other parts of the supply chain, there's big waste. So we are working and allowing consumers to pick up from farms, from factories, etc. That's a growing part of our business. It now makes up about 8% of our total business. But we know that there's probably a bit of a different business model that's needed to get after the rest of that. So long answer, but yeah, I think certainly momentum is building, but there's still a long way to go.
Thanks, Bill. And actually, that's really interesting. So actually, potentially, there's opportunities for a retailer, so the Mid-Counties Co-operative, for local suppliers to potentially get involved as well. Then, as you say, through that supply chain, we've got local suppliers, and is that the time?
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be great to, we're quite new to our partnership with Mid-Counties, and we've already saved, I was looking at the numbers just before jumping on the call. We're just shy of 30,000 bags of food that we've saved, and we only fully rolled out in September. So we're really focusing on scaling that first. But yeah, absolutely. So we've got a whole team that work with suppliers, and clearly you have a huge network within your business for that. So we'd love to explore other opportunities there, to engage with those suppliers and allow consumers to also pick up produce where suitable. It's not always possible, supply chains don't always allow consumers to come in, but yeah, we have learned a lot. We started with COVID actually, because you can imagine with COVID there was just a huge amount of suppliers that were sat on all this stock. So we sort of did something about it then, and then we've kind of learned as a result. We also did some fun things around when the pubs had to close. We did magic pints, so consumers could collect the beer before it went to waste. So yeah, we've got quite creative about how we can allow people to stop things from going to waste.
Great, thank you. Katie, one thing that you mentioned in your piece slightly earlier, you said that all the great work that the Food Hub's done, but you'd got back to a stage where you perhaps wanted to, I think you used the word reassess, to look at the way forward. Would you mind describing maybe what that way forward looks like for the Food Hub? Is it a slightly different look on things?
Well, no, we're going to continue what we're doing, but what we want to do is have really clear separation from food poverty. So during COVID, I think the messages have got a bit mixed up, and we've actually taken active steps to be able to get more food into our community during COVID, through, as I said, buying in food from other redistributors. But what we want to do is to continue supplying food to the community, continue to support people in reducing their food bills, both at community group level and for individuals, but really emphasise the climate change message. So we've been just doing the maths on how much greenhouse gas we can save. So last year we saved about 500 tonnes of greenhouse gas from all the food that we diverted. But if we can really get a campaign to tackle Shrewsbury's food waste at home, then we could save 7,000 tonnes a year if we could halve that. So we're really looking at the scale of climate change impact we can have, and that's really driven because we have a lot of our volunteers they're motivated by supporting the community, but also really concerned about the environment. And we've had quite a lot of young volunteers who are in despair about climate change, and we encourage them to take practical action by just joining us and stopping food waste, because it's a really easy, practical step. So that's where we see the future.
Thanks, Katie. And I think the interesting thing is with this topic, if you look at something like the UN Sustainable Development Goals, there's 17 goals, and sometimes people will naturally link this to food poverty, or they may naturally link it to climate change. But actually, it's something that really does encompass across quite a few of those goals when you actually start looking at them. And that, exactly as you've articulated, that has different interests, but also different issues emerge with that as well. Sophie, just back to you on the food poverty side of things. One question I was going to ask, and I'm glad I've got time to ask, is do you have any other examples of, I guess, the positive difference that's being made through Food Poverty Alliance and some of those particular examples?
Yes, so we try to be really evidence-based as an organisation. So we've had various bits of funding to carry out bits of research so that we can, understand in more detail what's going on locally for us and in the rural context that Shropshire is. So we've done a piece of research on children's food insecurity in the county, and out of that we were able to put together recommendations about the key areas of action, and we've been able to present that to influential forums in Shropshire, so we've taken it to something called the Health and Wellbeing Board that look at general health inequalities across the county. We share it with other groups, and it's also just really powerful from a sort of awareness raising point of view, because I think you don't necessarily associate somewhere like Shropshire with a problem like food insecurity or food poverty, and although they're not really comparing urban and rural environments, they're not comparable, but it's a different set of challenges that you face in a rural environment. You've got less larger, more affordable food retailers, your rural transport infrastructure is not there. Often it's quite a low wage economy, and lots of things like seasonal work and insecure work contracts and that sort of thing. So we've been really pleased to be able to do various bits of research. So we've got a local evidence base, so we can say to people when we're talking to key decision makers in Shropshire, like we have been out and we are monitoring the situation quite accurately here, and we have a really in-depth understanding of the barriers that we're facing and where the key levers to change things are.
Thank you, Sophie. And I'm also aware that there's a few people on here probably many people who are involved with food banks, whether it's volunteering, running food banks. And I know I'll just check whether Amanda Jane is on here. That's okay, just I don't want to ignore Amanda Jane if she's there, but I know I can see a few people on here who are involved in food banks. And I think from our point of view, because we've been working with yourselves for a number of years now, we really appreciate and can see the effort and the fantastic effort that goes on across the food banks. They really do an amazing job. And we see that whether it's through volunteering or just the partnerships through our food stores. And it's really good to see some of you on the call as well, because you really do a fantastic job. And actually the feedback you give us is really helpful as well. Sometimes you tell us about the impact you're making, the difference the products are making. It's great because it obviously keeps the motivation going across our colleagues as well to really get involved and support that. Karen, I'm just going to check because I can't see the chat in front of me if there's any questions at all at the moment in the chat.
Nothing's come in yet, Mike. No, so people might want to put their hand up if they've got a question.
Yeah, has anybody got a question? Yes, Melvina.
Yeah, please. Can I talk about Oxfordshire a bit? I'm a bit frustrated. Okay, I've got a sorting going on in the other room. I'm at the church. All I hear about Shrewsbury, much of that is going down in Oxfordshire. We have a food hub here that works with the supermarkets. I'm interested in this to-go thing. Why are you not all joining up? Tesco's have got an activity. There's Sophia here. There's Fair. All sorts of things. And in some essences, this is a bit confusing and frustrating for food banks that there are so many schemes going on in different areas. We've got a food hub. I know about Aspire. There are loads. There's food banks, all sorts of activities down here, and there isn't time to go over them with you. But I empathise with some of those things. But for me, simply, I'd like to know that every food bank box we have is in your stores. Some of the stores do not want the food bank box there. It's a nuisance to them at this time of year. And just sometimes such simple things for us, our collection boxes, we would love them just to be in a prominent position. I mean, we can deal with all these other things, but do I get the to-go? Have I got that right? That if you go at the end of the day, you get it at a third of the price? Is that the right? Have I got that right?
Yeah, that's
the food
correct.
Isn't free. Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
I've got that in my head. I just empathise with a lot of the things, but there's a lot going on around here as well, and in some senses the meeting's too big. But anyway, I've had my say. But please, can each store be more encouraged to have their food box in a prominent place?
Thanks, Mel.
Sorry.
No,
okay. It's a busy time of year. There's a big sorting session going on here at the same time.
That's okay. It's okay. It's really valuable feedback, and you know, my my feeling is that all of our stores, especially this time of year, should definitely be having and offering the opportunity to have those food collection boxes prominent. So it's definitely something that I'll pick up on, and make sure that we can do the best we can in that area, because it's all part of our plan over, particularly over Christmas and January, to really make that at the forefront. I think it's an interesting point you make as well on the joined up approach. I do think that it can be confusing, because you're absolutely right. There's a lot of different organisations trying to do things, and I think that's where. And the Oxford model is really interesting. Actually, you're right, Malvina. That could be something we could involve at a future session. And in fact, I'd like to do that, to try and get the Oxford model involved in that. Thank you. And we might come back to that.
Okay. That'd be the other thing I'm doing. Is just one more thing. Is I am buying from the co-op on occasions. Okay. I've got a link with one of your stores, which is top-up stuff, which is brilliant. They let me buy things, which is fantastic.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
So I am using you to. I've got a Fletchington store, might get things for me. Might pay for them, which is fantastic.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. And Patrick, question from Patrick?
Yes, a question really to you, Mike. When I was on the board, periodically, we raised the question of the disposal of particularly fruit, like kiwi fruit. But today I saw two cases of it, parsnips, which are wrapped and have a sell-by date, but are perfectly good. Kiwi fruit in particular are often bullet hard when they reach their sell-by date. Is it legal? Would it be legal to take good produce out of wrappings because it's wrapped? If it's loose, it doesn't have a sell-by date. And I don't know if this would be worth, if you could take that up and talk to people in food and find out if there's something that can be done about it. Because as I say, today when I was checking out at the checkout in the Headington store, we had in our basket, we had a packet of parsnips, and another customer came and said, is it okay? Can I buy these things? Because they reached their sell-by date. They had a discount ticket on them, and we had exactly the same packet of parsnips. Well, the parsnips were perfectly good parsnips. And I think that the worst example of all is kiwi fruit, which are in a little sort of plastic box with a net over the top. And as I say, often you can't eat them for several days after they passed their sell-by date because of the absurdity of this. I mean, it relates to this distinction between whether it's packaged or whether it's loose.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. I mean, it's certainly something that I would look into. My understanding is that as soon as something is packaged with the date stamped on it, you have to then stick to that legislation and that date and sell it in the packaging as you've been provided it as the retailer. However, that obviously is an understanding, and it's certainly a really interesting question you asked to see whether there is anything we can do and pursue on that. So I will look at that, and I don't know whether Katie, you've come across any of that with the food hub activity in Shropshire at all, whether that's been an issue that retailers have perhaps tried to work around.
Yes, and I know that some stores have deliberately take the packaging off and track through tags which aren't a sell-by date, and I'm sure that you're on board with that as well. But we would certainly distribute any food past its sell-by date if it passed Bill's sense check. Does it look all right? Does it smell all right? Does it feel all right? It will be all right if it's fruit and veg.
Yeah. Thank you. No, that's great thing to look into that. So thanks Patrick, and thanks Katie for that.
Just to build on that, one perhaps interesting point is we've done some work with the dairy sector because a lot of yogurts are used by, but actually, really by the nature of the product, they should be a best before product. And so we've worked on an initiative with Danone to change all of their products from being a used by category to a best before category, which is a really nice change we've been able to drive. And we're hoping to extend that across other major branded partners and potentially supermarket owned labels as well. And then what we're doing on top of that is we're working with Danone to kind of call that out to consumers on this look, smell, taste, don't waste campaign. So we're looking to activate that, on the fixture, on the shelf, and try and encourage consumers and try and drive that education really, because there's a lot of confusion, you know, myself included. I some certain food categories, you're like, is that safe, is that not, you know, and sometimes the dates are really confusing. You know, you've got display until, use by, best before, you know, and consumers don't understand it. So I think that's a really clear opportunity to reduce food waste if just purely on getting people to have that clarity.
Thanks, Bill. Karen.
Yeah, we've got a question here, Mike, from Richard. Who should a food bank contact at the co-op regarding opportunities to support us? Should it be the local store manager or you? Okay,
really good question, because if it is a obvious local relationship that you've got with a store already, whether you've got a food bank bin in place and that type of thing, then it would be the store relationship you currently have. However, if it's more of a broader opportunity that you think, you know, could be some sort of broader partnership, a little bit of thinking to go on to further activity, it would actually be me and our team within the CSR element. And it's the community email address, isn't it, Karen? Sorry, I just wanted to make sure we get the right email address. Community.
Yeah. Send it to the community. Yeah.
What is that again? Sorry.
Community team at midcounties.co.
Yeah. So that's exactly how that would work. But more than happy to have that sent in to me via that email address for me to look at those opportunities as well. Okay. Well, we are just about out of time, and we've had some really good questions there. I want to say thanks to everyone for attending, particularly thanks to our guests for your involvement and for accepting my grilling I gave you. Hopefully I wasn't too bad with the questions. I think the answers were fantastic. So thanks very much. Really appreciate everyone's time. And with that, I'll say good evening to everyone, and thanks for all your time. Have a nice evening. Thanks all.
Thanks everyone.
Bye. Cheers.
Bye.